Harlem, New York. While millions of Americans stand in breadlines and sleep in shanty towns, while unemployment reaches 25% and families lose their homes to foreclosure, while the Great Depression destroys lives across the nation, Ellsworth Bumpy Johnson sits in Harlem's most expensive French restaurant, casually spending $50 on a single lunch, wearing a diamond ring worth $20,000, and conducting the illegal gambling business that has made him, at age 27, one of the wealthiest colored men in America, with assets estimated at $8 million. Exclusive photographs obtained by the New York Herald showed Johnson dining yesterday at Chez Morris on Lenox Avenue, the exclusive establishment where meals cost more than working families earn in a week, where Johnson maintains a permanently reserved corner table, and where Harlem's elite, both criminal and legitimate, gather to see and be seen in a parallel world of extraordinary wealth that exists, hidden from white New York's view. But the real story is not the photographs themselves. It is the staggering accumulation of wealth they represent and the remarkable 7-year journey that transformed Johnson from an unknown numbers runner earning $15 per week in 1925 into Harlem's undisputed king in 1932, controlling a criminal empire that generates $5 million annually in personal income, and that has allowed him to accumulate material possessions that rival those of America's legitimate business tycoons. The Herald's 3-week investigation into Johnson's finances reveals a fortune built through ruthless business acumen, strategic violence, and an uncanny ability to recognize opportunities that others missed. A rags to riches story that would be celebrated as quintessentially American, except that every dollar was earned through legal enterprise, and every step upward was built on bodies of competitors Johnson destroyed on his path to power. Federal Treasury investigators who have been tracking Johnson's wealth estimate his current net worth at $8 million, a fortune that in 1932 represents wealth equivalent to approximately $150 to $160 million in modern purchasing power. But beyond the raw numbers, what shocks investigators is the speed of accumulation. Johnson has built this empire in approximately 7 years, averaging over $1 million in wealth creation annually, during a period when the average American worker earns less than $1,000 per year, and when most businesses are failing rather than growing. The material manifestations of this wealth are staggering. Johnson's primary vehicle is a 1931 Duesenberg Model J, the most expensive and most luxurious automobile manufactured in America. The Duesenberg Custom, ordered from the factory in Indianapolis, cost Johnson $25,000 more than most Americans will earn in 20 years of work, more than the cost of a substantial house, representing wealth so extreme that even most millionaires cannot afford such vehicles. Johnson's Duesenberg features custom burgundy paint, hand-stitched leather interior, bulletproof glass windows installed at additional cost, and chrome accents that gleam even in Harlem's dim street lighting. The vehicle is so distinctive that Johnson's arrival anywhere in Harlem is immediately recognized, the Duesenberg serving as rolling advertisement of his wealth and power. But the Duesenberg is just one of 5 vehicles Johnson owns. His garage also contains a 1932 Cadillac V16 costing $8,000, armored with reinforced steel body panels and bulletproof glass, used when security, the then style, is the priority. A 1931 Packard 12 costing $5,000, used by his driver for routine errands. 2 additional vehicles combined cost $5,000 for his security detail. Total investment in automobiles, $43,000. Enough money to purchase 40 average homes in 1932. Enough to support a working-class family for 30 years, spent on transportation that serves no purpose, beyond displaying wealth and providing luxury that 99.9% of Americans cannot imagine. The jewelry, $75,000 in diamonds and platinum, the diamond ring, NG visible in yesterday's photographs of 3. 5-carat diamond set in platinum cost Johnson $20,000 when he purchased it from a Fifth Avenue jeweler in 1931. The ring alone represents more wealth than most Americans will accumulate in their entire lifetimes, but investigators have documented that Johnson owns at least 8 additional diamond rings ranging in value from $5,000 to $15,000 each, for a combined ring collection worth over $100,000. Beyond rings, Johnson's jewelry collection includes 4 platinum pocket watches, average cost $1,500 each, total value $10,000. A diamond-encrusted wristwatch purchased from Cartier in 1932 costing $8,000. Multiple sets of diamond cufflinks, 12 sets documented, average cost $1,500 per set, total value $18,000. Platinu. And money clips, tie pins, and other accessories estimated value $10,000. Gold chains, rings for female companions, and miscellaneous items estimated value $7,000. Total jewelry collection value approximate $75,000 to $80,000. Wealth that Johnson literally wears on his body, that serves no functional purpose, that exists purely to demonstrate that he has resources so vast that spending $20,000 on a single ring is inconsequential. Johnson employs Hank Thomas, Harlem's premier custom tailor, who creates suits exclusively for Johnson at $400 to $500 per suit. Witnesses report Johnson owns over 100 custom suits, never wearing the same suit, -1 in any month, trading for $100 suits as disposable fashion rather than as investments to be carefully maintained at an average cost of $450 pay. Our suit, Johnson's suit collection alone is worth $45. 0. His shoe collection exceeds 50 pairs of custom-made shoes crafted by a Harlem cobbler who charges $125 per pair. Total value $6,250. His S. Her collection includes over 200 silk shirts at $30 each, when ordinary shirts cost $1. Total value $6,000. His accessories include custom hats, $50 to $100 each, over 30 owned. Leather G. Loves $25 per pair, dozens owned, and silk ties over 100, owned at $15 to $25 each. Johnson employs a personal valet who maintains this wardrobe, who ensures shoes are polished daily, who rotates suits to prevent wear, who treats Johnson's clothing with the care that museums devote to priceless artifacts. He employs a personal barber who visits his residence 3 times weekly at $25 per visit, spending over $3,600 annually just on haircuts, and grooming more than most families earn in 3 years. Johnson's 4-story brownstone at 409 Edgecombe Avenue on Sugar Hill, Harlem's most exclusive address, was purchased in 1931 for $85,000, a price that shocked the real estate market when comparable properties were selling for $30,000 to $40,000. The premium price reflected both Johnson's urgency to establish himself in Harlem's most prestigious neighborhood and the property's features, reinforced construction suitable for modification into a fortress, private garage, and location provided in clear sight lines for security purposes. Johnson immediately invested an additional $75,000 in renovations and furnishings, steel reinforced doors, and bulletproof windows. $15,000. Hidden safe room accessible through moving. Bookshelf $8,000. Custom furniture imported from Europe $20,000. Persian rugs, artwork, and decorative items $18,000. Security S. Systems, lighting, and modifications $14,000. The residence operates with a full-time staff of 5. Cook salary $40 per week. Housekeeper $35 per week. driver $50 per week, valet $45 per week, and 24-hour security guards $60 per week. Total annual payroll of $11,960 just to maintain a private residence. More than 10 working-class families combine annual income. Monthly operating costs, including utilities, food. Johnson insists on the finest ingredients. Wine cellar maintenance. His collection of illegal French wines is valued at $15,000, and miscellaneous expenses exceed to $1,000 monthly, or $24,000 annually, spent merely to maintain a lifestyle. While millions of Americans lack basic shelter, Johnson dines at Chez Morris 5 to 6 times weekly, spending an average of $45 to $50 per meal, including wine, food for guests he entertains, and his characteristic lavish tips. He routinely tips 100 to 150% of the bill, leaving $60 to $70 tips on $40 meals. Annual dining expenses at Chez Morris alone, approximately $12,000 to $14,000. He frequents other expensive establishments throughout Harlem and downtown Manhattan, adding another $6,000 to $8. Zero in annual dining costs. Total annual expenditure on restaurant meals, $18,000 to $22,000, enough money to feed 100 families for a year, spent by one man on meals that are consumed and forgotten within hours. Entertainment expenses are equally staggering. Johnson maintains permanently reserved tables at the Cotton Club. Annual reservation fee to $1,000 at the Savoy Ballroom. Annual fee $1,500, and at other nightclubs. On typical nights out, he spends $500 to $1,000 on champagne, entertainment, and tips, creating spectacles where he'll buy bottles of $10. Zero champagne from multiple tables. Will tip musicians $50 to $100. After performances, will spend money so conspicuously that his nights out become talked about events that reinforce his reputation for unlimited wealth. Estimated annual entertainment expenses $15, $0 to $18,000, bringing total annual consumption on dining and entertainment to approximately $33,000 to $40,000, more than most legitimate businesses generate in annual profit spent on ephemeral pleasures. How did Bumpy Johnson accomplish this extraordinary wealth accumulation? The Herald's investigation reveals a story that combines intelligence, ruthlessness, strategic positioning, and willingness to use extreme violence, qualities that in legitimate business might produce success, but that in Harlem's criminal underworld produce a fortune that exceeds what most legitimate businessmen achieve. Bumpy Johnson was born into desperate poverty in Charleston, South Carolina in 1905. His father earned perhaps $8 to $10 weekly. As a dock laborer, his mother earned $5 to $6 weekly as a domestic servant, and the family lived in conditions that approached destitution: inadequate food, no indoor plumbing, wearing clothes until they literally fell apart, experiencing the grinding, soul-crushing poverty that characterized most colored families in the Jim Crow South. When the family migrated to Harlem in 1919, seeking better opportunities, they found that the North offered different forms of deprivation rather than genuine opportunity. William Johnson found work as a porter earning $12 weekly, Margaret as a cleaning woman earning $8 weekly, and even with both parents working, the family struggled to afford rent, food, and basic necessities in a city where everything cost more than in the South. They fled. Young Bumpy attended school regularly, worked odd jobs, and by age 15 understood a fundamental truth that would shape his life. Legitimate work available to colored men in 1920 would never provide more than bare subsistence, would never offer the chance for real wealth, would consign him to a lifetime of poverty punctuated by occasional years of slightly less severe poverty. Wyatt Johnson's transformation began in 1925 when, at age 20, he began working for Stephanie St. Clair, the legendary Madame Queen of Policy who had built Harlem's most sophisticated gambling operation. How Johnson attracted St. Clair's attention remains disputed. Some sources claim he saved her from a robbery, demonstrating both courage and competence. But by 1926, Johnson was earning $200 a week as St. Clair's chief enforcer and protector, more money than his father had earned in a month, wealth that seemed extraordinary for a 21-year-old, but the money itself was less important than what Johnson learned during this period. St. Clair taught him the mathematics of policy gambling, how the odds were structured to guarantee operator profits, how to calculate payouts, how to manage the cash flows that generated enormous profits from millions of small baits, the importance of political connections. St. Clair maintained relationships with police captains, paying $500 to $1,000 monthly to precinct commanders who ensured minimal raids, with Tammany Hall district leaders providing campaign contributions in exchange for protection, with judges who dismissed charges away, and St. Clair's employees were arrested. The strategic use of violence. Johnson learned that effective violence was controlled and purposeful rather than random and emotional. Killing competitors served business purposes, eliminating threats, deterring others from challenging operations, but had to be calculated to avoid attracting federal attention that local political connections couldn't deflect. The power of community support. St. Clair employed hundreds of Harlem residents, contributed to churches and charities, positioned herself not as an exploiter but as a successful businesswoman who provided opportunities unavailable in the legitimate economy. This created protective loyalty that was more valuable than any amount of violence could produce. By 1928, Johnson was earning approximately $15,000 annually, roughly $200,000 in modern purchasing power. Extraordinary income, but still nowhere near the wealth he would later accumulate. More importantly, he had accumulated knowledge about how to operate criminal enterprise on a scale that would allow wealth accumulation that mere employment, even highly paid employment, could never produce. In late 1928, Johnson disappeared from Harlem, not returning until early 1930, an absence of approximately 16 months that remains one of the most mysterious periods in his biography. Where he went and what he did has never been definitively established, but when he returned, several things had changed. He had money. Sources estimate Johnson returned with $75,000 to $100,000 in cash, an enormous sum that he had not possessed when he left, suggesting either that he had been involved in highly profitable criminal activities elsewhere or that he had received this money from sources who had reasons to invest in his future operations. He had connections. Johnson returned with relationships to criminals outside Harlem, to figures in Chicago, in Detroit, in other cities. Had allowed him to operate on a larger scale than had been possible when he was merely St. Clair's employee operating within Harlem's boundaries. He had knowledge. Johnson returned understanding things about criminal organization, about relationships between white and colored gangsters, about structural arrangements that governed American organized crime that he had not understood before, leaving knowledge that would prove crucial to his ability to resist Dutch Schultz's takeover attempt in 1932. The Chicago period transformed Johnson from skilled employee into potential empire builder, providing both the capital and the knowledge necessary to build what would become an $8 million fortune. Upon returning to Harlem in early 1930, Johnson immediately began investing his mysterious cash reserves in building his own operation independent from St. Clair. Between January and December 1930, Johnson purchased 6 policy banks from smaller operators who were struggling during the early Depression. Total investment approximately $40,000. Providing Johnson with operations generating estimated $200,000 annually in gross profits. hired enforcers and collectors away from competitors by offering higher salaries, building an organization of approximately 30 employees loyal to him. Then to St. Clair or other operators, acquired his first real estate, 3 apartment buildings purchased for combined $60. 0. Providing both rental income and locations for conducting policy operations without landlord interference. Establish political connections independent from St. Clair's network, making initial payments to police and politicians, building relationships that would provide protection for his expanding operations. By year's end, Joe Henson controlled approximately 15% of Harlem's policy business, was generating annual profits of approximately $150,000 to $200,000, and was positioned for the explosive growth that would occur over the next years. 1931 was the year Johnson transformed from successful operator into Harlem's dominant force. Through a combination of strategic purchases and ruthless elimination of competitors, Johnson expanded his market share from 15% to approximately 35% of Harlem's policy business. The expansion was accomplished through multiple methods, bailouts of struggling operators, the Depression was destroying many smaller policy banks whose operators couldn't maintain cash reserves necessary to pay winners during periods when unusual numbers hit. Johnson, with substantial cash raise, bought out desperate operators at prices below true value, purchasing operations worth $50,000 to $75,000 for $20,000 to $30,000 from owners who needed immediate cash to serve. If forced consolidations, operators who wouldn't sell voluntarily face violence. Their banks were robbed, their collectors were beaten, their families were threatened until they concluded that selling to Johnson at his offered price was preferable to being driven out of business entirely. Johnson's reputation for controlled, purposeful violence made these threats credible, and most operators chose to sell rather than fight. Strategic killings. At least state policy operators who refused Johnson's buyout offers and who continued resisting his expansion were killed between January and September 1931, shot on the street, killed in their homes, murdered in ways that sent clear messages to other operators that resistance would be fatal. None of these murders were prosecuted. Witnesses refused to testify. Police investigations were perfunctory, and Johnson's political connections ensured that even when evidence pointed to his involvement, charges were never filed. Protection rackets. Johnson established systematic protection payments from businesses throughout his territories. Groceries, barbershops, restaurants all paid $10 to $25 weekly to ensure they wouldn't be robbed or vandalized. This generated additional $75,000 to $100,000 annually, while also creating a network of businesses that served as collection points for policy baits and that had financial incentives to support Johnson's operations. Real estate acquisitions. Johnson purchased 15 additional properties in 1931 apartment buildings, commercial, all buildings, vacant lots, investing approximately $500. 0 in Harlem real estate that both generated rental income and provided long-term asset appreciation that would preserve wealth even if policy operations were disrupted. By December 1931, Johnson's annual income had exploded to approximately $1.50 to $2 million. His net worth had reached approximately $3 to $4 million, and he was living a lifestyle that was unrecognizable from the poverty he'd experienced just 6 years earlier. This was the year Johnson purchased a Sugar Hill brownstone for $85,000. This was the year he bought the Duesenberg for $25,000. This was the year he began dining regularly at Chez Morris, spending $50 per meal without concern. This was the year he purchased the $20,000 diamond ring that would become his signature piece of jewelry, custom designed by a Fifth Avenue jeweler who typically served only white millionaires, featuring a 3.5-carat diamond of exceptional clarity set in platinum, -1 mounting with smaller diamonds surrounding the central stone. The ring's purchase revealed Johnson's psychology. The jeweler initially quoted $18,000, but Johnson insisted on modifications: larger side diamonds, more elaborate platinum work, custom engraving that increased the cost to $20,000 specifically so that he could tell people he owned a $20,000 ring rather than an $18. Zero ring, the additional $1,000, bought nothing of functional value, bought only the ability to claim ownership of an even more expensive piece of jewelry, revealing the extent to which Johnson's identity had become tied to material displays of wealth that demonstrated how far he'd risen from the poverty of his youth. The conflict with Dutch Schultz that erupted in 1932 was an existential threat to John's empire. Schultz, with resources exceeding Johnson's by a factor of 10, was systematically taking over Harlem's policy operations through economic warfare and violence that was killing Johnson's employees and destroying his businesses. But Johnson's successful resistance, his ability to kill Schultz's enforcers faster than Schultz could replace them, his ability to maintain community-wide support while Schultz was viewed as outside exploiter, his mysterious connections that apparently provided resources and intelligence that allowed him to compete with Schultz despite vast resource disadvantage resulted in Schultz's withdrawal from Harlem in late September 1932. The victory gave Johnson control of approximately 60% of Harlem's policy business, eliminated his most dangerous competitor, and established his reputation throughout New York's criminal underworld as someone who could not be intimidated or destroyed despite his relative youth and despite his race and crimin, all world dominated by white gangsters. By October 1932, as yesterday's photographs document, Johnson's annual income had reached approximately $4 to $5 million. His net worth had reached $8 million, and he was living with level of luxury and displaying level of wealth that rivaled America's most successful legitimate businessmen. Bumpy Johnson's $8 million fortune and the material excess it enables reveal uncomfortable truths about American society in 1932. The failure of legitimate opportunity. Johnson turned to crime not from moral deficiency, but from rational calculation that legitimate work would never provide escape from poverty that characterized colored life in segregated America. His success in criminal enterprise, his ability to accumulate $8 million in even years, demonstrates both his considerable talents and the reality that those talents could never have generated comparable wealth in legitimate economy that systematically excluded colored Americans from opportunities for advancement. The profitability of vice during Prohibition. Johnson's wealth was built entirely on activities that millions of Americans engage in: gambling, drinking alcohol, that Prohibition and anti-gambling laws made illegal. The criminalization of these activities created enormous profits for those willing to operate illegally, profits that exceed anything legitimate businesses could generate, demonstrating that Prohibition has created perverse incentives where criminality is more profitable than lawful behavior. The normalization of corruption. Johnson's ability to operate openly, dining at expensive restaurants, driving $25,000 automobiles, living in $85,000 brownstone, demonstrates that Harlem's political and law enforcement institutions have been so thoroughly corrupted that criminals can flaunt their wealth without fearing prosecution. The photographs showing Johnson conducting business while legitimate elites dine in reveal that crime has become so integrated into Harlem society that it's no longer seen as aberrant but rather as normal aspect of economic life. Asterisk asterisk the material emptiness. Asterisk asterisk J. Onson's $20,000 ring. His $25,000 automobile. His $50 meal served no functional purpose beyond displaying wealth. An era when millions starve, when families lose homes, when children go without adequate food or clothing, Johnson's conspicuous. Consumption represents obscene allocation of resources to purely symbolic purposes, jewelry that serves no function, vehicles that provide transportation no. Better than cars costing 1/10 as much, meals that provide nutrition no superior to food costing 1/100th as much. His wealth accumulation demonstrates that even extraordinary success and building fortune provides no genuine fulfillment, only generates appetite for ever more expensive displays that can never satisfy the psychological needs that drive the accumulation.